Oh, fancy.
All right. And now
Look at
people
that.
are coming in. Welcome as you arrive, everybody. I'll wait till I see the number be about the same that it was in the waiting room. And I think we might be there. Oh no, it's going up. All right. Hi, everybody. If you know me, hello and good to see you. And if you don't know me, my name is Jonathan Newman, and I have invited my longtime dear friends to join me and hold my hand as I do this. Um, uh, Roshanne Etezady and John Mackey and Steve Bryant are longtime Finale users. Um, Joel is helping things move along and is the expert in the room, gonna help moderate the chat, and we'll see if we can't help you out with Dorico a little bit tonight. Now, the first thing I want to say is, well, thanks for coming, and but most importantly, let's tamp down those expectations because there's only so much we're going to be able to do tonight. I will be sort of starting from zero and just giving you an idea of how I use the program, how I have used the program, um, the little things that I've learned along the way, and but all along with the flavor of like coming from another piece of software, which is really, really quite different, as I think probably a lot of you already figured out by clicking around. I remember that feeling when I first started clicking it around in version one. It's quite different than it was then, but let me give you a little bit of a preface here and say that I was using Finale 1989, 1990 or something like that. I bought my first copy and I used it all through school and became quite proficient. And then I started in grad school. I started copying for my friends. When I left grad school, I did professional copying to support myself as I was trying to make my way writing. And to that end, I started to learn other programs in addition to Finale. Most significantly, Score. If you are old enough to know what Score is, congratulations! You too are also eligible to get your special vaccines for being an old person. Get your and but so I learned a lot from starting to think flexibly between those two programs, and then Sibelius came out, and some of the publishers were starting to use that, and that to me felt like a different kind of program and a little more of a musical program. And we'll talk about the benefits of Finale a little bit. And then I used Sibelius for a long time. Joel, I think you're still using Sibelius, correct?
Yes, but only as recently as 2017. I was finale, I think 1995 to
Oh
2017.
wow. Okay, I didn't know it was that close. Um, then there was that whole hubbub with the Sibelius team leaving Avid, and then they started making Dorico, and I was intrigued and started using it at its first versions. It wasn't quite ready for prime time at its earliest versions, but it is now. So let's get to it. Steve is will be in and out due to his family stuff, and the idea of my friends being here is to they can try things out. If you guys would, as I do things, you can click around. I will say this came up when we were talking before. Roshanne mentioned that she actually does not have the full version of Dorico. So if you are doing this with us and you have Dorico going, if you are not using Dorico Pro but are using the other, is it Dorico S? What is it called? The light version. Um,
I have a trial. I have Dorico 5 trial version.
is it Dorico Pro?
It one moment, please. It is, yes.
Yeah, okay, good, good. So that's good. Then you'll see the same stuff that I'm seeing. But if you're using the lighter version, which I apologize, I don't remember exactly what it's called right now. It it has missing features on purpose. And some of the things that I talk about, you might not be seeing. So I just wanted to say that right away. Okay, so, all right, already there's a chat. Okay, so Joel's on top of it. Thank you, Joel. Use the Q&A for the thing. No questions yet, because here we go. I am going to I'm going to share my screen. You know what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share my whole desktop, which just makes things a little easier. And we'll be in, you guys seeing this? Yeah, okay. All right, now, this is what mostly you get when there's a couple of other ways to enter the program, but this is very early in the process of opening the program. All I want to do is tell you about the general way first that this software is laid out. It works in these modes that are up here. There's 5 distinct ones. There's really 4. This 5th one is not really a distinct mode, but they represent the typical parts of a compositional workflow, right? And they don't necessarily need to be gone in order, but you will be moving back and forth between these modes. You can, now first thing I'll tell you is there are key commands for everything. If there isn't a key command, you can make one. And it's a pretty simple, straightforward thing. So let me tell you, moving back and forth between these modes of working, because each one does something specific and has certain things that you can do in it and certain things that you cannot do in it. So I have an itchy left hand that moves back and forth between these modes as I work all the time. And I do this by, now I'm going to speak Mac, okay? Everybody I know on the screen is using a Mac. Is that right, Roche? Are you using a Mac? You are, right? Yeah. And so I apologize for the PC people. I will speak Mac. You're just going to have to translate the command to control and the option to the alt. This is actually laid out pretty elegantly. Command 1 is the setup mode. Think of the setup mode as your instrumentation page. This is where you add the players, and I'll get to this in a second. It's where you set up your parts and your scores, and which your parts and your scores, and some other things like your flows. I'll get to that in a minute. I just want to talk about this top menu here for a second. Command 2 is the write mode. This is where you input things and edit things. Command 3 is the engrave mode. This is the layout mode. In this mode, you actually can't change notes on purpose. This is actually, I'm here to tell you, a brilliant feature, because once you're in there, you can't accidentally change your F to a G as you're, moving a slur or something like that. It is only for layout. I would say this mode is definitely the highest learning curve. It is the trickiest to wrap your brain around. It is the one that I think would be the most difficult to translate from Finale to here. Although everything that you can do graphically in Finale, which is a lot, right? It is basically a graphic program. This is where you would do it in this part. And then of course 4 is where your VSTs are and where you hook up your this is the play mode. This is basically like a miniature version of Cubase. I don't use Cubase, but my understanding is that this is it's the Cubase engine. And then Command 5 takes me to the print mode, which is obvious, right? This is where you could print and export files in various formats. Okay, so I move back and forth between these modes. Generally, I'm moving as I work. I move back and forth between write and engrave. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Command 1, Command 2, Command 3, Command 4, Command 5. If I hit Command 6, then I'm toggling this top menu here. I'm hitting Command 6 back and forth, and I'm toggling the top frame to make it go away or show. If I hit Command 7, I'm toggling the left frame to make it show or hide. If I hit Command 8, I'm toggling the bottom frame, which you can't see in that mode. I'm toggling the bottom frame on and off. And if I hit Command 9, now you'll guess it's the right frame. If I hit Command 0, I turn all the frames off, or all the frames on.
Newman, let me jump in for a second. We have a question asking what Command 5 was from Holly.
Command 5 is print. So here's 1, if you could see my cursor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're rarely gonna, until you're ready to print or export, that's it. That's where this happens. It's the equivalent in Joel, it's the equivalent in Sibelius of like that file menu, that home menu where you can do all your exporting and stuff. Okay, so another thing that we should talk about is, now that I'm in the setup menu, the differences between flow. You'll hear these words in Dorico. There's flows, there's layouts, there's projects. They're fancy words that basically mean this. Flows are movements. Think of it like, if you think of it like that, one flow is a movement. You can have multiple movements inside one file. That's basically how they are used. Now, there are other ways they can be used. But if you want to get super simple, and I think we should, flow 1 is movement 1. So if I wanted to call this movement 1, that's it. That's flow 1. That's my first movement. All I did here down here was double click and type. If I want to add another movement, I can. Down here, there's this little button that says add flow. I click it, it thinks for a second, and now I have a second movement. And I can move them around. You can drag them back and forth and around. Now, I'm going to get rid of this movement just because I don't need it right now. All I did there was click a trash can. So that's the basic way of thinking of a flow. However, let me tell you.
This is a very, like, I told you beforehand, my questions are going to be like, what's a Dorico? Okay, could you just, I was clicking over on my Dorico window while you were talking about how to out of flow. Could you just tell me that one more time, please?
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
So you have to be in setup mode. So I'm on Command 1, I'm in setup mode, and there's this little button down here on the right. I don't know if you could see my cursor. And there's a little flow button, looks like this, with a little plus sign. And if you hover over it, it says add flow. I'm pretty sure there's probably a key command for it, but I don't know it. Or you can make one, and then I clicked it. And that was it. Now I'm going to delete it by pressing the little, you sure you want to do that? Yes.
Got it. Amazing. Thank you.
So they're basically movements. However, I did a big piano variations a couple years ago, and I made each variation into a flow so that even if they were right next to each other, so that I had like 12 flows, I could work on each one distinctly. And one of the benefits of this is that you can actually have kind of different layout preferences for each flow. They don't necessarily all have to match notationally, and I'll show you this. So it's a way of separating things out notationally as well. Like for instance, I could show it to you, but it would take time. For instance, one variation.
We have a couple questions, Newman. Sorry. You mentioned flow and being hidden. Matt is asking if it's a single movement, can the flow be hidden?
Yes, absolutely it can. I will show you where to do that, but not right this second. But
fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so this is a great opportunity for me to say, I'm watching the questions. I'm going to keep track of them and let him do his thing, but I'll get to them. Also, the chat has been fixed, so head on over there and do your thing.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was broke. Fix and broke. Okay, so the reason they call it a flow and not a movement is because it doesn't have to be a movement, right? There's a fancy ways of using them. Like if you're doing like I don't know, like a worksheet for one of your classes or something, each flow can be an exercise, or you can have multiple exercises on one, you can have multiple flows on one page. It's all, I'll show you. I will get to that within 2 hours. It is pretty slick, I have to say, when you figure out how to do it. I even had a student do an aleatoric thing where they did, things were like in some sort of George Crummian circle, right? And they had like little measured few bars and a few bars and a few bars, and they put them in a circle. You can do that, each one being a flow. So it doesn't have to be a movement. That's just the simplest way of doing it. The layouts over here are just basically parts and scores, various kinds of parts and scores. I mean, right now there's only this one instrument, but well, maybe that's what I'll do is I'll get to that when I add more instruments. You'll be able to see, because you can add more scores and more parts. For instance, a part that is like a percussion score that includes all of the percussion parts, or a conductor's score that's a different size, or a reduced, a reduction that's all in the same. It can all be in the same file. You can have your full score, your parts in different keys, your reduction, all in the same file, utilizing this layout function. So there's hands being raised, Joel. Should I pause before I go on to the next thing?
I think that'd be let's test this out. Let's see how this works.
All right.
So go ahead, Jerry.
Oh, is he gonna write that? He's muted, or is he going?
He should be able to unmute if he wants to, or he can just.
Oh, I think I can unmute.
Oh Lord, here we go.
All right, Jerry, why don't you write your question in the Q&A, and then Joel can just ask it. Here's what I want to do next. I'll move to write mode just to make this a little easier. The way the Dorico works is it just sounds silly, but it notates for you. So if you think about finale, in finale, it's as close to actually like drawing on the page as you can get. You input the notes, and then you sort of if you want to put a dynamic in, you go to the dynamic tool and you click on the page and you put the dynamic on the page, right? And then if you want to move it, you drag it somewhere else. And if you want to take you want to put a crescendo in, you drag it across to where you want it, right? This is not how this works, which I think is why there's such a wall with the finale here. So you do have to get used to a couple things. There are a library of option menus here that thankfully in a recent version, they put them all kind of in the same place here. They used to be all in different places. In each one of these, I'm going to start here at the notation options. And of course, these all have key commands, which are very useful to know because you're often going back and forth between these. In these, this one is Shift Command N. Shift Command N will get you to the notation options. In the notation options, this is where, in all of them, this is where you set the laws of the universe for your music, right? You basically tell it, how do you want to see your accidentals? How do you want to see your cancellations? How do you want to see your cautionaries? How do you want to see your bar lines? How do you want to see your final bar lines? How do you want to do your clefs? Everything, the beam grouping is a big one. It's a big one, right? You go through here and it's just an endless supply of options. This is what you have to do before you do anything. Go through every single solitary option here, choose which one you like, and use it, and I suggest save it as a default. And it's not just the notation options. And by the way, there's a little search bar here. So you could even, start to, you could type something and it'll bring up, so you don't have to go searching inside something. Or let's do percussion here. How do you want to show your percussion? This way, that way, this way, that way. This is what I'm talking about. In any other notation software, you have to make it do this. In Dorico, you actually don't make it do anything. You just let it notate. If you want to change it, you change it here first, and then it renotates it for you.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Can I, if I decide that I want to have it notated in a particular way, can I then like change my mind after a while, and then will it retroactively change the things that I've already changed?
Well, so yeah, this is global. So this is global for actually only the flow. If you saw I had multiple flows, this particular one, the notation options, is global just for a particular flow. So you can change it on a flow by flow basis. But for other things so here's the layout options, and in here you show where you want in general your bar numbers, how you want your braces to show. You don't draw the braces; it puts them in based on your preferences here. Again, go through everything. Now this one you'll see in the layout options. This affects just the full score, or these are my options for my part. Or you can select all the conductor score layouts that you have, or all the parts that you have. Or you could select all of them and make it affect all of them. Again, this is how you want things to generally look on a global case. Can you change this on a case-by-case basis inside? Yes, you can, of course. You can, and I will show you how to do that. So there's all these very, very useful things it's got, the reason that's like that is because I chose both layouts, and those are two different. So it defaults to let's just go through here for a second. In the layout options, which by the way is Shift Command L, all of these are Shift Command L, Shift Command N. For the engraving options, which is this one, that's Shift Command E. But they're all available up here with their key commands. Can everybody see when I do the menus? Okay. Again, go through, take an hour, go through every single one of these. It will make you'll get a little swimmy. And then, as you go on, you'll see what you actually like and see what it does. But let's we go to the layout options, right? This is where you choose your page size. This is where you choose your staff size. Now it actually uses, in here, if you go to the preferences, you can choose your unit of measurement. I still use inches, but you don't have to do that. You have other options. So this is why it's, I think at least in the rastral sizes for staff sizes. And so in Finale, if I remember correctly, the page size was this sort of weird ass formula of page reduction and staff size, and you had to you could have 25% reduction in this staff size, and those aren't real staff sizes. In reality, in the old metal engraving, right, there are actually only 8 sizes. And it actually gives you the old 8 sizes. This one is the size 3 is the part size. This is that's like a conductor's score size. and the things in between. Something like this 24, this size 5 or size 4, that's size 6. That's kind of like octavo staff size. And everything is based on the staff size because you know that the staff size, the space of a staff is the unit of measurement in notation, right? And that is a relative measurement based on the size of the staff. And Dorico thinks in spaces. So it thinks in relative things that are relative to the staff size. So this is important. So if I was doing a string quartet score, which I was going to start, I might, do something like that size. And then here's your page margins and stuff, and you can talk. This is where, by the way, you can not show your flow heading right there. And if I hit apply and I close these out, you can see my flow heading went away. By the way, it says untitled project. I don't, like I would in Finale or even Sibelius, although Sibelius has got this kind of too now, I think, or maybe they probably all kind of similar these days. I don't go in here and I click on this and change it. I change it in my project info because these are all tokens. These are all like, Steve knows what I'm talking about, right? These are all like, how do I explain a token, Steve?
It's a variable that it's filled in from this. The Finale has something very similar like this. In fact, I think it's called project info. So this should be familiar to the Finale people. Do the same thing.
Right. So I can just put that in there, and we'll get to where you can see that. But my flow heading went away because it's a single movement, and you can do that.
Yeah, they're called inserts. I think that's what Brian Sexton just said. I think inserts is the Finale word if you want your analog.
Right. And there's a ton of them. I actually have sort of memorized some of them, but I often, when I have to do something, I often have to go back to the list in the manual, and look it up if I don't remember. There's so much here. It's hard to. This is where you can. Let's see. This is a good one. There's all kinds. I would go through every single one of these, especially when you are starting a score and you have some music in there. You can sort of see how these things change things. Like this is where you say full name, abbreviated name. You can. I think it's in. Is it here in the players? I don't remember. Oh yeah, this is where like you can have, let's say it's like a trumpet in B flat, right? Do you want the transition before the name of do you want B flat trumpet, or do you want trumpet in B flat? You don't write it out, you change it here in this. So everything happens, when I say this is where you set the laws of the universe, this is it. Like the answer to almost all your questions is in the layout options, the notation options, or this is a biggie, the engraving options. And you'll see that there are similar, there's a percussion section inside the engraving options. There's a percussion section inside the notation options. And I think there's a percussion section inside the layout options, are there? No, there's not. Because they do different functions, right? This is what the percussion will, how many spaces away do you want the names of your instruments? What default stem directions do you want? That kind of thing. Whereas here, it's, more voicing and things like that. Okay. These are all here. There's also a fairly new feature that I haven't explored so much called the Library Manager, where you can see all of these things in one place and compare them against the factory settings your own saved defaults and another project, another file. So you can say, you know, I had my divises set in a certain way and I want to do it the same way in this one. This is where you can, instead of opening that file, you can go in here and you can make sure that things match. It's complicated. Let me say one thing. The Steinberg has superb videos. They've done an excellent job with their YouTube channel. They have an absolutely charming gentleman do these videos. They're very helpful. They go by feature. So if you wanted to like look up the engraving options and you wanted, there's probably a video just for that, right? And so I think that's a channel. What I would counsel is just make sure that you get you're watching the most recent video on the thing, because the software has changed quite a lot over the last 9 years or so. Joel, are there any other questions that I should be answering?
I think there are lots of questions, but I do think it's probably best for you to go through your spiel and then we'll circle back around.
All right, input. Let's go back to the setup mode. Now, Finale thinks in staves. You put in a staff, you basically tell it this is a violin, you assign it a violin sound. It's probably a little more sophisticated than that these days. That's the way it used to be, at least, right? And there's a lot that was really great about that, because if on a page you didn't want it to say violin, you wanted it to say mandolin, you could just change it, right? That is not how Dorico works. Not even how Sibelius works. Sibelius works in instruments. You want an instrument, you put in the instrument. You want another instrument, you put in that instrument. You want them both in the same player? Well, you got to take those instruments and extract them both to the same player, right? Now in this, it thinks in players, in actual physical human beings. So if you want a flutist who also doubles pick, you add, now down here is where you add the players, and it makes distinctions between a single player and a section player. The section players are obviously basically string players, right? And the reason it makes that distinction is because in the section, for a section player, you can then do divises, and it can actually notate divises for you. It's pretty cool. But then there's also, you can also, put in whole ensembles. But I'm not going to do that because I want to show you something. If I put in another violin, which by the way, all you have to do is just start typing and it will bring up the instrument that you want. Right here, now here it says empty-handed player. I've created a new player, but it's not holding an instrument yet. So I'm going to give him another violin. Now, before it just says violin, but as soon as I give another violin, I now have a violin 1 and a violin 2. It numbers them for you. This is one of the issues that you're going to see when you start importing in your Finale files. Because the numbering that you've done in Finale really, as Steve and I figured out, it really mucks this up. So if I add another violin, it will be violin 3. If something has the same name, it's the same instrument, it will start numbering them for you. Now, let's say I want this violin to also have a mandolin. So now he's holding 2 instruments, and I can have him move back and forth, and I'll show you how to do that. Just have to make me go back. Let's add a viola and cello.
If you tell me this works for percussion, my head will explode because it like.
Oh my God, Rosh, you have no idea. The percussion will make you cry. It's so beautiful. We'll get to percussion. I have a whole thing on percussion, but it's already 7:35. All right, now, does everybody understand that? You guys grokking this? All right. Now I'm going to go into write mode. Now it defaults to this, it defaults, I think, really nicely to no time, right? So I could just start typing things and it just keeps going. There's no time, right? Now let me talk about input a little bit, and because I think even just on this, I have a lot to talk about. I haven't put any time in. This I think I love because it's not forcing you into bars yet, right? You can, of course, start off with bars. It's very easy. But now we're going to talk about some of the inputting functions. Okay, this thing up here is a system track. To input, everything, okay, let me see if I can articulate this in a clear way.
While you're formulating that, this seems like a timely question. Someone's wondering how they can get to where you are right now, because I think they're trying to follow along.
Command 2, write mode. You could also go up here and click this little tab. I went from command 1 to command 2. Now, if I want to start inputting, all I did, by the way, I went up here. I just hit a down arrow, and now I'm at violin 2. Now I'm hitting return, and I can start inputting. I haven't touched the mouse, but there's another way to input. That is, I should probably teach you because there's this system of popovers. They're popover windows. If you hit Shift N, that gets you into the note input mode. Shift is the preamble. It's the prefix to a whole plethora of input options. Shift something gets you to do something. So Shift N is note input. And I can actually input on any staff. I'm just moving up and down arrow on any staff. I don't have to do anything. I can actually also input on multiple staves at the same, you know what, I didn't check to make sure my, to make sure my keyboard was working. But I take things up an octave with Control, Option, up arrow or down arrow. Control, Option, up or down. Takes things up and down an octave. Not quite like in Sibelius, which I think is Command arrow or something like that. It's a little, and if I want to move a note up or down, it is not an arrow key. An arrow key moves me up and down. Staves. It's Alt, it's Option arrow. Option arrow moves the note. Now, let's add a meter here, just to make things happen. As I'm inputting, again, I'm going to do Shift something. If I do Shift M, that brings up this little popover. That is my popover input for meter. I can simply type 4/4, return, and I have my meter. If I select it again, I just hit return because it was already selected, and I change it to 3/4, it rebars it. Now, all of that is available over here on the right. Let me see if I can bring that over here. If I bring that, see these panes over here? Everything that you can do in a popover, you can do up here. But I hate the mouse. If I never use the mouse, I will be a happy camper. So I have learned everything by just typing and doing things. So obviously the input is different than Finale as far as notes. In Finale, the default is, I think if I remember correctly, it's duration first, then pitch. The default for Dorico is the opposite, but it is easily switched. I believe here, if you hit K, it will flip it to the Finale version. These are your durations. They all have a number attached. Now, John, didn't you tell me that you had set these? I learned them in the Dorico.
Yeah, you can, yes, you can make it so that I changed it so that like 5 is the same rhythmic value as in Finale, and 6 is the same as in Finale, so
Where
that
did
I
you
didn't
do
have to
that? I
learn
couldn't
that they're
find it.
off by, because you can, that's about the only thing I figured out in my 2 days is how to make it so that at least if I press 6, it's the right duration. So
Yeah, but you did that. You did that. I can't even figure out where that is. Do you remember where you did? I bet a lot of people.
There's like a YouTube video for every single thing you could ever want to do, and there was one that explained what drop down to use to like change each of the,
Yeah, so I don't know, but we know it can be done. For every time I moved a program, I just learned the new ones, right? So for me, okay. This system track, now I can see I have 3 bars. They call this the system track. It's actually super duper useful for lots of reasons. I can click on one of these things, right? And I can delete the bar. Gone. I can add a bar. I can add multiple bars. I can actually also do Shift B and add 4 bars. I think I can do Shift B, and you can do various things with with bar lines and stuff with that particular bar. I think I can go -4 and it will remove bars. But this system track also allows me to do a bunch of other things, which is really cool. Now look down, if you look down here, you see, can everybody see in this corner? I can't make this, whoops, I can't make this bigger, but there's this, I don't know what they call this, but in this is where I can see the division of the bar. Right now it defaults to an 1/8 note, and of course there is, and you can see it when I click on here, you can see there's the division. I'm holding down Option as if I just hold down the Option key, you can see in the quick track, you can see the division, but you can also see it when you're inputting. I can move around and you can see the division, right? Now, if I go down here, and I'm going to go with the mouse, and I change the division to 16th notes, now I can move around in 16th notes, and I can even start inputting right there. What this division, which by the way, the key command for this, it's a rough one, is Option, and it's the bracket, the open and close brackets that are kind of below the plus and minus on your keyboard. So now if you look down here, you can see I'm changing the default durations that I can do for input, but it's not just for input. If I go back to 16ths or even 8ths, it does dotted ones too for compound meters. I can now extend things by that duration. I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm now extending the duration of this note by an 1/8 note. I'm now extending it by another 1/8 note, extending it by another 1/8 note, shortening it by an 1/8 note. I can shift it in time by an 1/8 note, moving it around back and forth by an 1/8 note. If I go here and I switch it to a quarter note, now I can shift it by a quarter note. Is everybody following that? It's extremely useful. And it's kind of how everything works. Now, how I'm moving things around and pushing them back and forth is, well, let's see, to extend a note is Shift, Option, right arrow or shift option left arrow. So I'm holding down shift option right arrow, and now I've extended my duration by a 16th. Now it's important to know that I'm saying the word duration because I think I can get rid of this, right? Yeah. I'm saying the word duration because Dorico thinks in durations, not in rhythms, right? So it's going to renotate this duration based on where it is in the bar and it can completely renotate it based on where it is in the bar and what the meter is. By the way, I can change the meter anywhere. I just hit Shift M and I can, start a 4/4 there. Now what that does is, let's say I don't want that anymore. I can now delete that, or I can change that to a 4/4. And if I want, I could just get rid of this. So now I'm back to 4. I'm not going to get to everything. So dynamics is a shift, another shift function, Shift D. There's my dynamics popover. I type my dynamic and I'm done. But it's not even as, it's as simple as that. But if I hit, now I don't use the mouse. So I hit tab, which got me back to the notes. I can tab back and forth between type of item. If I hit, I can change that, MF. Or I can, there's functions, and I made a key command for this where you can increase the intensity, decrease the intensity, back and forth. It's particularly nice to select any bunch of notes. You do piano, crescendo, that's just a regular caret, and an F. Now watch what it does. I'm gonna hit return. It does the crescendo. Oh, look at Roche, it's like, wow, look at that. Yeah, it does the crescendo, but it puts the forte after, like I selected only this bar, but it knew that what I wanted was the forte there. Now, if I want, I'm going to bring this back to eighth notes. I went down here.
Maestro, if I can jump in for a second. If you could sort of narrate your keystrokes as you go, I think it might be helpful since we can't see what your hands are actually doing.
I tried to have my phone set up on a tripod so you could see it. It didn't work with the webinar because I couldn't be logged in at the same with 2 cameras, so I gave up on it. So
you're doing great. I think if you just narrate it, because you've told us how you do these things at the beginning, if we can just get reinforcement of it all along the way, I think it'll answer a lot of the questions from the chat.
Okay, so was there a question about what I had just done that I should redo?
Just everything you do, people are like, how did he do? What did he click? What?
Okay, let's do this again. I clicked, I wanted to select this bar. So I clicked somewhere in the bar and I got the bar. I could also, I'm going to click outside the bar. I could also click one note and do like shift command right arrow and select more of it. But what I'm going to do is just select the notes in the bar by not selecting a single note, just the bar. I think a lot of programs are like that. And now I hit Shift D, which got me my dynamic popover. And I did a piano, crescendo, and that's just the caret that's over your little comma. F, and it put the dynamic in. Now, if I click on this forte, I can now move this. I don't drag it. I don't move the dynamic. I don't you don't muscle things in like you do in Finale. You move things, you muscle things around the page, right? You don't do that here. I have this thing down here. I want to move it by 2/8 notes. So I hold down Shift, Alt, right arrow, and I'm now moving this back and forth with my arrow key, holding down Shift and Option. I'm now moving it back by 1/8 notes. Do you see how I'm moving it by 1/8 notes? You see the track at the top?
And if I can just jump in to clarify here, by pushing, what was it, Shift Command or whatever the keystroke was you were doing, what tool was that activating?
It's what it's doing is any object can be moved. Like I'm going to create a I will create a technique, a playing technique by hitting, remember I said you Shift something does notations. So I'm going to do Shift P for playback techniques. You see the little up bow, down bow that comes up there now? I'm going to type Pits. And there, Pits is starting to come up. And the reason it comes up is because it's got a whole library of notations that are going to affect your playback. And you can obviously, so I'm going to choose the Pits. And now there's my Pits, right? But I could actually move that Pits. Let's say I had, by the way, copying is just like it is in Sibelius. I don't remember. You can do a regular Command X and cut something. And I can click this bar and I can do a Command Paste. That will work. Now I'm just hitting undo. Or I can hold down the Option key, just like in Sibelius, and I'm not sure what in Finale whether you can do that, and I can click somewhere and I can put that. I can even put it in multiple places. If I, whoops, I'm going to bring that up in a couple octaves. Now I'm going to bring, can I put it in multiple places? I suppose if I copy it, I hit copy, I did Command C. Now I'm going to click these 3 bars, and I did that. You can select them like this if you want. Or you can do like a Shift down arrow thing. And I do paste, it will put them in all the parts. But a lot of programs do that. But I can take this pizzicato technique and move it to the next note. Now I did that with an Option arrow. Option arrow moved it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I have something you said. I think it was really important for those of us who are coming from long-term Finale habit. The idea of you don't muscle the notation. So there's several people on a theme of, but how do I tweak the dynamic placement? How do I tweak the tempo indications? And is that all just automated for whatever practice, sort of house style you set up?
Yeah, so the first answer to that question is how do I tweak it is I'm hitting Shift Command E for the engraving options, and I'm finding my dynamics, and the first place you tweak it is here, in here, depending on where exactly you want things. There's quite advanced options about how wide spaces are, apertures, things like that. But then the second answer is once you want to do something outside of that, yes, there are more functions, more advanced functions that I will show you if we have time. Let me just do one more thing. I'm clicking here on this violin and I'm hitting an S, which we all know. This one, when I first started Dorico, it took me forever to try and figure out how to move a slur, right? Because I was trying to grab it. I was trying to do how do I get it over to the next note? You do the same thing you do with everything else. I'm hitting Shift, Alt, and right arrow to move it to the next note. Shift, Option, right arrow to move it to the next note, or back left arrow to move it to the note after. If I want to actually move it, I do Option arrow. By the way, in Dorico, the flip function is an F, not an X, an F. X does something else. So I'm hitting F now, and I'm flipping it. Does that make sense? Now, articulations. Now I hit tab. I just hit tab, and what that did is it brought me back to the note, away from slurs and back to notes. If I had another slur, which let me make another slur here. If I had another slur, which I do, and now I have one selected, if I just hit my left arrow, I'm going to move to the next slur over. If I had a slur below and I hit down arrow, it would move to the next slur down. I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's actually something pretty cool, which is like a select more function, where if I did Shift Command A, you know how Command A is like select all? If I did Shift Command A, it does like an intelligent select all. It selects the next thing in that category. So it would select, I'd hit Shift Command A and it selected both slurs. If I had slurs all through the page, it would select all the slurs on that page. If I hit it again, it would select all the slurs in the piece. So I'm hitting tab, which gets me to the next note. And I'm moving back here. Now, why am I doing that? So that I can do an articulation, which they're all here, but they all, of course, all have key commands. They're all on the keyboard. So I just do the one on the keyboard. They're all listed, so you can learn them this way, where they are. Let me go down this list. This right here is just starting the note input. Shift N, like I showed you. This here is to toggle whether you do pitch before duration or duration before pitch. This is chord input. I rarely use this, but it's if you hit Q as you are inputting, which by the way, I'm selected that note. I'm gonna hit Shift N and I'm gonna start writing. If I hit Q and by the way, I'm not even using my MIDI keyboard. I'm just typing an F. And if I hit F, it's going to put the F above. It's going to put the closest F to it. That's now I'm in chord mode. If I want to get out of it, I hit Q again, and I'm out of it. As I go, even I'm in input, I can do popovers. I can say forte here, and I'm still in input mode. I haven't left. I can still move on to here and do another note, and I can do another note and have an articulation on it. I just hit the key for this articulation, and I'm going to hit an A, and I'm still in note input, right? I haven't left. You don't have to leave a mode to do durations, articulations, slurs. You can just stay in note input mode. You can get a lot of music in very quickly this way once you learn how to use it. Ties. Let's say a lot of time ties happen auto-magically, like this, right? Because I extended it. But let's say I didn't do that. I'm going to make this, let me bring this back to being a half note. And let's say I wanted another F here. Now, this is interesting. This is what freaks people out about Dorico. As soon as I'm going to hit a T, okay? T for tie. I'm going to hit a T, and what happens? That, right? Because it's thinking in durations. It's thinking this is the simplest way to write this duration in this, in this time signature. Now, you come back to me and you say, I don't want that. I want it to be, I want all of my, I'll go here. I just hit notation options, which is in the library menu down here. I did Shift Command N. And somewhere in here is the note grouping. I can split it to half bar. Let's say I wanted to do that. Instead of that, as soon as I hit apply, it should work. Why didn't that work? I'm not sure why that didn't work. Let me try this again. That was a fail. Huh. Why did my split at the half bar not work? Starting at the start of the bar or the half bar, multiple beats in duration. I'm not sure why that didn't work. Let's try that. Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure why that's not working. It usually does. But I can actually also force it. So let's say I take away the dot, which by the way, inputting dots is using the period. If I just hit period, now it's a half note instead of a dotted half note. If I go here and I hit a quarter note, I'm inputting a quarter note F. I hit the duration of a quarter note by hitting 6. I hit an F on my keyboard or an F on your MIDI keyboard, and I have an F. Now instead, if I want this tied and not a full duration, I can hit this function, force duration. It's an O. O. I hit O, I activate that, I hit my tie with hitting a T, and now I've forced it. It should have worked within notation options. I'm not sure why it didn't. Now, did you see how the violin 2 line went down like that? I'm going to do that again. You see how it went up? Because that's the minimum distance. There's no such thing as vertical spacing in Dorico. It just does it. You can change the parameters of it, how far an item needs to be for it to move a certain distance, but basically it does it for you. You never have to worry about it. I can also cut a tie. You can cut a tie with the scissors down here. That's U. Any tie can be cut. This is a super useful function. It's the insert function. With insert, I can hit insert, and now everything that I do, you see this little bar that's coming up? Now I'm in insert mode. It's a dangerous mode. You can really muck things up with this, right? So you have to be careful. It is now going to push everything on this staff to the right as I type, right? And I can insert in. Now, there's some cool functions that are a little higher end, which is up here. I can make whatever I insert stop right there. This little thing in the system track, I'm clicking on the system track and I click this little button here, this stop button. Now anything that I put in here is just going to, let me see if I can, I'll put it, you know what, I'll do it. I'll stop it. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, that's fine, we can do that. I'll insert in here. And that's it, it's not, everything is stopping, right? It's stopping at this bar as I insert. It's deleting music. I'm just selecting this stuff and deleting it. Now I'm gonna get rid of this. So that there are things that you can do with the insert mode. There are also way other fancier things you can, like, if I want to, like, this is a little inside baseball, but it's really cool to show you. I just went down here and I changed it to eighth notes. Let's say you say, okay, I want to make all of this eighth notes instead of quarter notes. I'm going to go in insert mode, which I'm still in. And I'm going to hit my eighth note. I just moved to eighth notes over here. You can click on it, but I hit 5. And all of a sudden, it smushes. It doesn't just insert, it also deletes space. If I didn't do that, if I wasn't, I'm going to undo. If I wasn't in insert mode and I hit 5, I would change all those durations to eighth notes, but they wouldn't be next to each other. I would have to go here and move them like I told you, one after the other. Here. I'm using the Option arrow keys to move those notes. But I didn't have to do that. I just did it with the insert mode. Okay, there are voices. You can do things in multiple voices. So I am now in regular note mode. You see this little up arrow, this up stem thing? If I hit, and you'll see it here, Shift V adds a voice. Shift V, and now you can tells you what you're about to add. I am about to add a downstem voice. And I have I'll do a duration. I hit 7 to do a half note, and I'll do a G. I'll do it down the octave. Does that make sense? And now it's smart enough to, like, I'll do a slur, and it'll put it above, stuff like that. Questions from the peanut gallery of my friends? So far, so good? Okay.
I think this is all great. If there's something that we could do for maybe 5 or 10 minutes,
Yeah.
that'd be great. And then get to the chat, because there's a lot of questions that I think are great and really specific that you're going to have the answers for.
Okay. Let me quickly then go into, I went to Command 4 to play mode, to the play setup mode, write mode, engrave mode, play mode. This is where you do your, if you want to do your VSTs and assigning instruments, this is where it happens. I don't do a ton of this. I'm very bare bones. So I've got Note Performer running. It's got a template running. It automatically assigns things from Note Performer, and it's basically done. But assuming you had a VST that was in the right folder, there's like a folder, as long as it was installed in the VST3 folder, it will automatically see it. You'll be able to add it here as an option. You can add, if I hit add, you'll be able to see the VSTs that I have. Not many. and then you can go track by track. Now you see how you don't see the mandolin? This is actually interesting. We didn't see the mandolin, right? This player is playing a mandolin, but let's say I want this note to be a mandolin. Okay, so there's a couple ways of doing this. In this view mode, you're in page view, but just like in Finale and just like in Sibelius, there is a galley view. If I go to the galley view, it shows me all the instruments. Okay, all I have to do is, I'll cut it. I mean, there are other ways of getting it down there. You know what I'm doing? I'm gonna hit this. I'll tell you another one. N and M. If you hit Option N or M, it can bring things up a staff or down a staff. So I'm going to bring it down a staff with Option M, and now it's in the mandolin, and I'll hit Shift D, and I'll give it a fortissimo, and I'll tab up there to get to the note again, and I don't know. Yeah, that's fine. Now, when I go back to play page mode, which obviously also has a key command to get back and forth between these modes, it tells me that I'm moved to the mandolin. It just moves players. If it's far enough away, it's smart enough to say to pick, to E-flat clarinet, and then E-flat clarinet. And then when you go back to your B-flat clarinet, it will say to B-flat clarinet. It does all of the notations for going back and forth between instruments for you. Can you adjust those? Yes, you can. You do them inside these things. And this obviously translates to the part too. And the reason I brought it up is it translates to the the mandolin is a separate instrument, which will have a separate assignment and a separate routing to a VST, etc. I should also point out, no, I'll do that later, if I can. I like the snort. Okay. Now, is that enough, Joel? Because there's a very important stuff I do.
I think that's great. So why don't we do? I'm just going to run through, do a speed run through some questions. I've kind of got them grouped by category, and then we'll see where we are, and then you can get to some things. So these are some questions from earlier. Cy Anderson says, so the right mode is simply for the musical material only. Where do things like adding text and other markings happen? You touched on other markings, but not lyrics specifically. And there's been a number of people with that. Yeah.
I have a section for doing vocal things, but let me do a couple of them, because I was looking over here. I'm like, oh, I never did anything like clefs. Everything is over here and over here, right? These are notations of notes. These are other notations. There's a key command and a popover for all of these. I highly recommend you use them. For instance, let's say this was, I'm going to bring this up a couple octaves, right? And let's say we wanted it to be a treble clef. Then I hit shift something. What do you think that something is going to be, John? C for clef. C for clef. And what do? I type a damn treble and I hit return and it's done.
Can you do mezzo soprano clef?
Yes, you can. You can do any clef. This is also, by the way, where you do 8 VAs.
But can you read the mezzo soprano clef?
This is where you do the 8 VAs as well, and they all have popover written functions you can do. So if I am here, I tabbed over to get from the clef to here, and I hit my 8 VA, it will put the 8 VA and bring it down the octave. Because what it's thinking is this is a notation for that particular pitch.
And so then can I assume, as a person who doesn't use this program, can I then assume if you're going to do a clef, the clef would then also attach to the note that it is indicating is now in the new clef? So you could do it mid-measure?
Oh yeah, you could do it mid, and I can move it around. I'm moving it by doing my Alt arrow key, my Shift arrow key. And I can bring it to the front. I'm moving it around with an arrow key, holding down the Option key. So yes, I can do that.
Great. Thanks.
Here's uncommon archaic clefs. There's tons of them. Keys, same thing. I can change the key, Shift K, and I type my key. Okay, so let's make, I don't know, let's do this D minor or something like that, right? Let's do it at the head. We'll make it D, D minor, hang on. Why isn't it not doing it? Maybe I'm not doing it right. By the way, this is where you can do different temperaments. You can make your own key signatures, stuff like that. This is where you put in the weird accidentals with you can tell it to do the microtonal stuff, and then the microtonal accidentals will pop up here. It's pretty cool.
Speaking of that, since you mentioned doing non-standard notations, Allison asked, do they have to be separate flows to create different types of notations? Like, for instance, aleatory versus a non-standard versus a standard?
No, in fact, this is one of the cool things is I'm now going to change this from being 4/4 to no time by I hit Shift M for meter, and I hit X, and now there's no time.
That's rad. Yeah.
And there's all kinds of things that I will get to. And actually, I think I should probably touch on this. Remember I said option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4. Remember I started doing the things on the panes on the side. I'm hitting option 8. This is the most important pane, the one at the bottom. Any item. This is where it's most like score. This is where Dorico and score are in love. Any item has parameters, and you change those parameters down here. So for instance, if I want the style of my open to be an X, it's an X. Or I can have none. Or I can have John's favorite squiggle, the Penderecki squiggle. Or I can hide it, I can do all kinds of things down here. And by the way, what you see, now you see this X here? Oh, that's what you were seeing, John. That's a flag. It's a signpost. It's up here in the view menu. Everything has a signpost. So if let's say you know what I'm going to do? Bear with me, everybody. I'm going to add a piano. We'll make this a quintet. Whoops. And the reason it's up there, I'm just going to drag. By the way, you could drag these. Dragging it down to the bottom. There's my piano. I'm going to go back to write mode, and I'll write a big chord here. You know what I should have done? I should have tested. I'll write a big C, and I'll extend it all the way through here. And let's say I want a pedal on this, right? What do you think the pedal is? Shift. It's a playing technique, P, right? And I type pedal. It will do a pedal mark, which I can move back and forth based on whatever my duration is, right? I can add, if I want to do anywhere in this bar, I made a key command for it, but right now I'm going to right click anywhere in this bar. Actually, I should probably do it here. I'm going to right click and I get a contextual menu. If I go down to, why do I not have pedal lines? Yeah, okay. Let's bring this over a little bit. I'm going to scissor this. I just scissored it with a U. Bring this over here. And I want to lift up. I'm going to click there. I'm right clicking, get my contextual menu. Again, I made a key command for this, but I'll show you. This is where you can do your retakes. Add a retake. There's my retake. No more joining lines, no more trying to make sure they're exactly the same X level, or you know what I mean? And I can move this back and forth. By the way, let's say I want my time to start again here. I can hit measure and start my time again there. I'm going to put in a tempo here, Shift T for tempo. And I'm going to type senza tempo right there. Now, look down here in this pane. Let's say I have a new tempo up here. The tempos are right up here. These are the tempos. Shift T does it. But let's say you wanted to choose something from this list with your mouse, and I hit moderato. Okay. I don't go up here and type. I go down here, and I change it there. I can change this to anything, and this is where I change my metronome marking and which division gets the marking. And I can show the metronome marking or not show the metronome marking. I can show it parentheses or not show it parentheses. Every option for a particular item is down here in this pane. This is the answer to all the notation questions of how do I change it to, you don't muscle it. You don't go and try and add you just use the functions that are already here. I can even say circa. I can even change how that circa looks.
So just to be super clear, it seems like rather than typing into the score, you're always interacting with the dialogue box.
Yeah.
Mm.
You're changing most of the time what you're doing is your default mode of thinking should be, I'm going to change the parameters of this item. I'm going to change it from being this to that. By the way, when you start getting into engrave mode, I'm now going to hit Command 3, you get even more options down here. The options start to change. Like, for instance, here's I've clicked on the slur, and down here in my pane, here are the various parameters of my slur. I can give the direction. I can make it into one of the piano slurs. I can change the style of it from solid to any of these kinds of dashed or dotted ones. This is where I do that. It's not a different kind of a line. It's just changing the parameters of that slur.
Since there have been issues of like this in the chat, what is that editorial option under style?
Oh, it's just like it's one that editors use to say get rid of it. It's not a thing that you would ever really use.
Oh, okay. I was just curious if there was a way to sort of, without globally changing things, have one specific slur be slightly different. I think that was a David Crum question from earlier.
Hi, David. There's actually, I'm going to hit Shift Command E in the engrave mode, and there's a whole ton of stuff you can do with slurs by default. That is really cool. Like, you can have them default be the flat slurs if you want. And if I apply that, it should, I don't know why it's not, probably because I changed it here. So now that's the flat slur. It doesn't work great unless it's like, long. The flat slurs don't look really good until they take up like a system. You can, if it's tied, like let's say this is tied, I'm gonna tie this. By the way, what I did was I hit Option down arrow to change the note to a C. I'm now arrowing over to this C, and I'm hitting T to tie it. Now, if I go back to the slur, I just tabbed a few times to get to the slur. You don't have to do that. You can click on it. It's okay. You can click on things. I just don't like doing it. I can change the start position of the note to be the two different options of have it go to the beginning or the end as like a parameter of the slur. If I go into...
So I think the thing that people were missing, and myself included, is that there's a separate mode for fine tuning and grading issues like this.
It's not really separate. It's always down here, even in write mode, even in the input mode, this pane is active. I can click on this forte and I get parameters for that forte. I can click on this crescendo, and I can, by the way, this is where you say niente or not niente. And let me get rid of this this piano. This is where that niente is part of the slur. I could turn it on and I could turn it off, and I can change it from being an end to the circle. All in write mode and all down here in this pane.
That's awesome. I've got several questions that are all sort of clumped together with basically the old template model out of Finale. Like you create your template for your grade 3 pieces, your template for your 4-part choral music. Are there a way to do something similar in Dorico?
Yes, I believe there is. If I go into, say, notation, I can save things as defaults. Can I have multiple libraries? I believe I can. I've never done it myself, but I believe this is where you would do it, in this library manager here.
That's great. I think rather than trying to find it just knowing that where they could explore it is a good idea.
So in other words, I can drag and drop the Dorico file from my last grade 3 and then have everything match it here by clicking on things to make it match. Right. So we did these dynamics are pretty cool. Like you can do these things here. You can even do like, I'm going to do Shift D and you can do one of these. You can do like a crescendo, diminuendo. Why did that not work? Why did that not work? Okay, there's one. Now it's inputted as like a hairpin up and down, which I can move intact. What else? You can create dynamics down here. This is where you can add your poco and your multo. And you can do that down here too. Like here's if I want to do poco a poco, I don't add a notation. It's just a parameter of the crescendo. Make sense? So, and you can see those things are now active here in this pane.
That's great. There are a lot of people in the chat and in the questions. And by the way, let me shout out Michael and Drew in the chat who are doing a lot of triage for me. So that's really fun. Thanks, both of you. There seem to be some questions for people who like to work with a MIDI keyboard entry and they haven't seen that represented. How different is it than what you've been doing? And how would you do it?
Not different at all. You simply, it's exactly what I was doing. You just Shift N or you hit return when you're on a measure. You can go anywhere in the bar to start or anywhere on any staff. I'm just going using arrow keys to move up and down. And then you would hit on your MIDI keyboard, A, C. And it comes
Excellent.
up.
And then there have been several questions related to, I think it was called Hyperscribe in Finale where you play in. How does that work, or does it work?
That's a good question. I don't think Dorico does that. I could be wrong, but I have not seen that feature.
It's one of the few things I actually played with the other day. By accident, I hit record somewhere, and
oh yeah, there is a record button. That's right. You're right.
I know nothing more than that, but it exists.
Yeah, it's this record button. It can be done. Yes, it's up here. He's right. Thanks, Steve.
And here are a couple of questions that I think will be very easy. How do we change like that A that the mandolin has taken to an A sharp?
Ah, yeah, thank you. You're right. I should have gotten to that. Easy. I'll just give you the key command. Hold down the Option key and press the plus sign. Sorry, press the plus sign. When I hit the Option key, you're doing an enharmonic equivalent. So here's my A sharp. If I want a flat, it's the minus sign. If I want nothing, it's a 0. 0 for natural, and I can, by the way, let's say I want to force the natural, right? You can hit 0 again, and it will force the natural. Or I can go down here, and it's right now because the natural is automatically hidden because it thinks that it should be, but I can force it. I can also show it in brackets.
Is there a keystroke to make it show up, or do you have to interact?
You can, like, let's say I went, back up here. 0 will force the natural. Plus is a sharp, minus is a flat.
So we've got about a half hour left, and there are a number of questions from really sort of sophisticated users who are longtime users of Score and Sibelius and Finale. People like the wonderful Danny Dorff.
Hi, Danny.
who are asking, Dorico's so wonderfully comprehensive that there's a lot to learn. I'm having trouble finding a logical order of learning things incrementally. What's the best strategy for learning things in an ordered way?
Good question, Danny. You know what I did? I chose one project that I knew wasn't time sensitive, and I just started inputting it in and then figuring out how to use the layout functions to make it look right. And by trial and error, without, again, it was important to not have a time crunch on it. I did it that way, but I think trying to input in some music this way, trying to grok the popover system with shift something, does the trick. And then this is actually a good segue for moving on to the layout stuff, which we have to touch on. Now in layout, I'm going to tell you, it's amazing. It's very, very powerful, but it is, it's tricky to learn. It's hard to learn. This is basically like a page layout software inside here. This function, you can think of it like Quark. It thinks like Quark. It's like InDesign. If you've ever used Adobe InDesign, it actually does the same shit. Okay, there are these page templates that you use. It follows the templates. If you change the templates, it tells you that you're not. I can't explain everything, but what I can tell you is a couple of things. In this mode, I can click on an object, any object, not just the note, but the stem of the note. The slur, this is where I can adjust the slur if for some reason I don't like what it's doing. I also have everything that I need down here. I would start with this. I have all kinds of ways of hiding my stem, hiding my hide my note head, which you can't see while I'm selected it, but there, now I've hidden my note head, and now I'll unhide my note head. This is where you put in, and by the way, you can do this I'm going back to write mode. I hit Command 2. This is where you put in your LV, your laissez vivre. It's just a button down here. But let's say, for instance, I go into engrave mode, and now I have all these. I would, play around with this stuff once you've learned how to input. Let's say I actually want that laissez vivre to be flipped. I can hit F and I can flip it in this mode. This mode gives you all the control over how something looks. Can I change what this note is? I cannot. I am now clicking, trying to change what this note. I'm trying to move the note. I can't do anything to the note, but I can physically move things. But let me show you a couple things very quickly. In this mode, this is the graphical selection mode, graphic editing. I click on an object and I can graphically edit it. Like, I can actually move this forte now. I couldn't do that in write mode. I could move it by a duration, by a rhythmic value, but now I can actually move it by a little bit, right? And how I'm doing that is I'm holding down the Option key and using the arrows. I can move it in large jumps by holding down, I think it's Shift Command arrow. Yeah, I can move it in larger increments with Shift Command arrow. Graphic mode. This is this one over here. That's graphic mode. And by the way, I made key commands for all these because I move back and forth between them all the time. This one over here is where you deal with frames. Let me show you something. See this blue box? That is a music frame. By default, this is the default. It's going to get confusing. Do you see this blue box that I just clicked? Now I can click this box. right? Now let me add some, bear with me, I'm gonna go back to write mode and I'm gonna add some bars. Let's just add some bars. Just so I have some music in here, okay? Now I'm going back to engrave mode. I move these things back and forth very quickly, Command 2, Command 3. Now I'm back here. Now let's say I want this to be my system break. I can click any object at the beginning of this, or the bar line. It doesn't have to, it could be the first note, or this meter, or this bar line, and I can create the break. I hit the system break. There is a key command for it. And now this is how you move measures around. I can make frame breaks are page breaks. That's what we think of as page breaks, but they're frame breaks because this, I'm going to go back to the frame. This is my frame. I can move the frame. Now my frame is that big, and that's all the music that can fit in it. But I can draw another one, right? I can, oh, sorry, I think I made a text frame by accident. I can draw another music frame. I went here, insert a music frame, and I can draw another one. And now this is where you can put, it gets really heady. This is where you can tell it like how these things flow from one to the next. It thinks that this is the next music frame, but let's say this was a different flow. I could put a different flow in here. Do you guys, the people on screen understanding this? Yeah, okay, good. Let me undo this for a second. So there's music frames, there's text frames. So I can write text inside that. And this is where you can, do instructions or something like that. It does not exist in write mode. It does not flow with the music. It's just on the page. This is also where you do graphics. You can import in a graphic, put it in a box, stick it on the page, move it around. But the most important element for the frames, and there's just too much to do with the frames. It's a very steep learning curve. I suggest you watch one of the videos. It has to do with these templates down here. You can see how this one is already red. It means that I've futzed with it. It's different from the default. There's a default first page, which by the way, this is the default if it was on the right side. This is the default if it was on the left side. And you can copy those back and forth. Here's my tokens. And this is where these things change. So if I actually put in the, in the project info, if I actually put in a composer and I hit apply, it will do Joe Schmo. And if I went here and I wanted, let's say I wanted my Joe Schmo to be higher, then I make sure I'm in my frame mode. I'm in my page template for my first page. Let me get back. I don't grab it here because it's going to futz with it. If I want it for every time I go here, now every time I make a first page, it'll be a little higher. And now it should be, oh, it's not higher because I futzed with it. Now I'm going to right click and I get a contextual menu and I'm going to say remove the page overrides. I've overwritten the template. See now the red's going away and my Joe Schmo has moved up because it's taking it from the template. These are my default templates. This is the default template for any page in the score. I can change so that means this is basically where the music is going to be. This is my header. That's a token for a page number. This is where all that happens. It's very, very powerful. You can do lots of very sophisticated stuff with this. but you have to learn it. There's also
I think that
yeah.
that's great, Newman, and having done that, which is pretty in the weeds,
Yeah.
but sort of powerful from a production side of things.
Yeah.
Let's get back to some of the more basic ideas of just sort of note input and those sort of things. I know that you showed a keystroke earlier where you showed specifically where I asked you to change an A to an A sharp. There was several questions in the chat. What if we wanted it to be a B flat instead?
Yep.
Can you go back to that A and demonstrate that?
By the way, I'm going to zoom in by doing Command plus. So now there's my D flat, and I want to make it a C sharp and harmonic equivalent. I believe in Sibelius you hit return, but in Dorico it's Alt and then a minus, not plus but minus, Alt minus, because you're bringing it down to its note equivalent, to its enharmonic equivalent. So I'm hitting Option minus now to make it its enharmonic equivalent to D to go the next note name up. It's Alt plus. If I want this to be an E sharp, I would do Alt minus.
Fantastic. And yeah, for Sibelius users out there, it is just return. But you don't have microcontrol like that. I have a couple questions from some what are becoming power users in the chat. What about different percentage sizes for the music, page to page? Like you would sometimes you see those old Strauss scores where suddenly you can't read the page anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can do that. I believe in the engrave mode. I mean, you can at any point, like let's say I wanted my piano part to be smaller. You can change the staff size to like in a piano trio, your string parts are smaller. You can do it this way, but I understand the question is not that. And there's also in the setup there's also the general rastral size. You're going to need someone from Steinberg, but I believe there is a way to do this in engrave mode.
I think we just leave it there, because anything beyond that, we got a lot of questions. But you think there should be a way to do it where it doesn't globally change everything?
I believe there is. Yes.
Okay, great. We've got several people who have asked about choral music, so maybe we could talk about lyrics.
Yeah. So let's make a soprano part. I'll bring it up here. I'll just copy in my music here. I'm selecting this. I'm shift clicking to select the next measure. All this is sort of intuitive computer stuff. Shift clicking does more. I'm going to hit Option click to copy it. That's one way of copying something. You can see that all of a sudden my dynamics are now above, right? Because it knows that it's a simple matter of shift something. Remember? So shift, what do you think I do for lyrics? Roshanne's good at this game. Shift L.
Wait, I thought Shift L was a different thing, but clearly it's not. But
so
as a person who's now sort of a power Sibelius user,
yeah,
it's been a consistent thing all night that things that are just L are now Shift L in Dorico.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So it seems like it'd be a pretty easy switch for someone who's a Sibelius user.
So I'll do the quick brown fox. Okay. And so I typed in and now I'm going to hit spacebar and quick. Now let's say I want to do brown as a melisma. Okay. So I'm going to do another spacebar and another spacebar to get it to the next note, the next duration. See this right here is a duration. It just thinks of it as 2 beats. It doesn't know it's tied, right? So but it's smart enough to put in the lyric extension where it needs to. And I'll do the same thing here for Fox. I can do it there, but if I hit space again, I get the lyric extension. Now let me do another one. I'm just gonna select the notes here. You know how I did that? I hit one note and I did Shift Command A for select more, and it selected the notes in that bar. Now I'm gonna Option Quick to copy, and now let's say I want to split up my syllables. Somebody give me something that has 2 syllables in it. Very good. Okay, so here, VE, is it VE-RY or is it VERY? VE dash, right? VE, then I hit the hyphen. Yeah, it doesn't pop up yet. Then I do the re, and I hit spacebar, and there's my hyphen.
Thanks, Jonathan. And this might not be a question that you have done in the past, but I think we've got at least a few church musicians in the chat who are wondering about multiple verses.
Yeah, that is. I believe you hit the down arrow when you're in. What I did, by the way, I clicked on this note. I hit Shift L. I'm now in lyric mode. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's down, just the down arrow, and now I'm in the second verse. And,
wow, that's powerful.
Now, what's really cool is I can click on one of these. Do you know how, like, when you have things that have lyric extensions, it's right justified by default. But let's say I didn't want that. See down here in the bottom pane, this is where I change these things. I don't muscle my way through it and drag it over. It's got an option for that. If I click, these are my options in write mode for my lyrics. Do I want the line above or below? What line number is it? What is the alignment of it? Is it left justified? Is it center justified? Is it right justified? What style is it in? Do I want to show the verse number or not?
Okay, so just so we're clear, you're only working on Fox. That's not a global thing you're doing.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Speaking of that, this is very important. See down here? Locally, globally. If I do an option here and this locally is clicked, and I change this to center, this is only going to affect this layout. But if I click global, this is super powerful and you have to be very careful with this. If I click global, this change will now affect every layout. It will propagate to everything. It propagates to the parts, it propagates to any other layout that might have this staff in it. So as long as this is local, it will only affect this thing, this view. But if it's global, it affects everything, the parts, essentially. It's very important to know which mode you're in at any given point. You know what? I brought up some scores. It might be helpful to show you some things because I know we have 10 minutes. Let me just bring this one up for a second. This is a piano trio I wrote a couple months ago, but it has some things in it. Yeah, now it's just my no performer stuff comes up. Yeah. Okay. So I'm in, let me just bring this out so you can see the whole thing. And Now there's no panes, there's no nothing. I'm in engrave mode, and you can see the whole piece, okay? It's helping me remember things. So in engrave mode, it's not just this graphic thing or the frames. There's also a note spacing mode where I can adjust the spacing, which I did here, you can see, on an individual beat basis or an individual note basis. This is where, and these aren't dragging, you don't drag things. You click on it, and I can move the beat. I'm holding down the Option key and going left, right, and I can move the beat wherever I want the beat. I won't save this. And what else?
I think it's important. We need to point out for a second that this is not being dumb about it. It is managing the entire system. The beat placement is.
But I can now also, if I click inside this mini one here, I can actually just change this one.
Oh, wow.
Without affecting the beat, which is pretty great for aleatory. This right here, if I go back to graphic mode, because it's easier to see, this is an independent time signature. They're really easy to make. They're really easy to implement. So this actually is a 13/8. It is a 13/8 bar that happens over these 4/4 bars. I just made the bar lines for this independent one be repeat bars. And then I drew a line. The lines are in write mode. They're really cool. The lines are here, over here, in the write mode. And you can create your own, but there's the vertical ones. This is where you do, your brackets and stuff. But there's a ton of things you can do with this. But the coolest feature about it is you can designate how the line is attached to things. The beginning of the line is attached to the note. The end of the line is attached to a bar line. The beginning of the line is attached to a bar line. The end of the line is attached to a note, or attached to a particular division of the bar, a particular place in the bar. So these bar line, let me go here. This line right here, I can move it according to the division of whatever I turn my system track off in this because I'm done writing, but I can move it. So these are independent. I can't obviously do independent ones. This laissez vivre is simply down here. The laissez vivre is on instead of off. I didn't draw it. It's not a symbol. It's just on or off. The staff here is smaller. Oh, so harmonics. They're not a note head change. They're actually, you put in the harmonic. You tell the note to be a harmonic and what note it is and what style you want. And it plays back. It's pretty nifty. Like, let's say I wanted to change this to be a harmonic. You just click it and tell it to, you can do it in various different notations. You just change the notation you want. Right now it says ORD, but let's say I wanted it to be an artificial harmonic at the fourth partial, which is, let's be honest, that's what we usually want. And there it is. I see John is like, oh, it is pretty cool. Everything, I guess my point is that like everything is kind of like that. If you think, oh, I'm going to draw a blank or I'm going to change the note head, you have to stop yourself and think there might be a thing down here that does that. And sometimes you can just do this. There is a new feature that is pretty nifty, which is the J. If you hit J, it's called the jump bar. And it brings up this sort of contextual menu. It's kind of like Sherlock in Apple. You just start typing, and it will give you various things that might come up. I didn't want rehearsal marks, but let's say I wanted rehearsal marks. It'll give you all the things and you can go to that. So if you just want to, like, you know, where do I do the, go to the next, filter all my rehearsal marks? I can do that if I wanted to filter all my rehearsal marks. Oh, and also, so now all my rehearsal marks are filtered. And it will remember the last thing you did. So this is super useful. I use it all the time. Let me show you a part. I've kind of mucked up this file, but you can see that there's a cue. It might be easier to see the cue in, I did a cue for the, you know, the cues are, maybe I should do the cues in a different, do I have another cue? Let me see. I don't have a cue here. Okay, yeah, all right, here's a cue. Oh my God, the first time I saw the cues, I literally cried. You cannot believe what it does with the cues. This is a cue. And when I go back, by the way, it's just like in Sibelius. If you click W, you go back and forth between the score and the part. So where was I? It's at L.
The Apple option / and finale jumping.
Right. So here I have a cue right here. Now do I want to see that cue? I'm going to now, I've got all my, I'm going to show, now my signposts are hidden. I'm going to unhide them. And now you can start to see things like, whoops, sorry, it's the fugue. Where's my fugue? Here it is. Is the cue not shown? Oh, I guess it's only showing, there's an option for showing the cues in the score, and that's turned off. So now it's, sorry, it was in the cello, wasn't it? Yeah, here it is. Here's the cue, and you can see down here, all you do, I can actually now take this cue and make it longer or shorter. I can change how much of it I want to show. And I can say what the text is for it, whether I want it above or below, whether I want to show the slur or not show the slur, show dynamics or not show the dynamics, everything you want. And it's just a simple, this is a terrible file to show this in. The other thing I wanted to show, which we're now out of time, is the condensing that can be done. Nadej was doing sometimes does these Ferenc symphonies, and they're very expensive, but they're PD, so she thought she would make her own editions. So we got the manuscripts from the National Library in Paris, and I started engraving them. I just started. It's an on and off project. So this is where you could actually see some large ensemble music. But what's actually happening here is there actually is a flute 1 part, flute 2, oboe 1, oboe 2. You input everything by, let me show it to you. If I turn off the condensed mode, you now are viewing all the music. I don't remember where it is. I think it's in, is it in the edit menu? Yeah, here it is, condensing. This is where condensing is turned on or off. When you want large ensemble music to be condensed, you simply input everything into its separate parts, like a part score, and you have Dorico condense it for you. It has now done it for me. No more flute 1, flute 2 staff, flute 1, flute 2 in like a master score. It's now a view of the score. Now you can't edit in this view. You can't do stuff in this view, but it's something you do later. And can you change it? Can you adapt it? Are there rules of the universe for it? Yeah, hell, there are tons. In the notation options, in the engraving options, they're all over the place. Yeah, I just have to figure it out. And there are ways of overriding it, which ones stay, which ones don't. Yes, it's very powerful. You can pretty much do everything you want with it. I think, Joel, probably in the last, we're obviously over, but we should talk about moving files, right?
Yes, because I think that amongst everything, the number one question is, how do I take my existing finale files and make them presentable in Dorico? That'd be really great. Yes. People are freaking out in the chat, by the way, by what you have just demonstrated. So
yeah, I wish
I think we might have buried the lead a little.
I think that there's so much that it does that is I mean, that queuing thing, by the way, like if I wanted to queue oboe right here, I click in here and I can create a queue, which by the way has a key command, and it'll bring this up, and I just start typing the instrument that I want to queue, and I can choose oboe 1. It doesn't show in the score because I have it set to not show in the score, but you can have it show in the score, and there's the little flag for it. Now there's a queue, and if I actually go to that part, you can see the queue right there, which by the way, I can now extend. It's so
Whoa, are you just extending what's showing in the part?
Yes. You can change the length of the queue and how it views. No slurs, or I want it below, or anything like that. It changes how you queue, right? Okay, wow. Anyway. As far as you can see how far.
And while you're thinking, everyone in the chat has been asking, yes, we have been recording. We will post the recording. Just follow John on social media. He'll tell you.
Yeah.
Mackey, that is, not Newman.
Right. John's a lot more followed. So here's what I would do if I were you. I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would go into all my finale files and I would make PDFs of everything. PDFs of the most correct version of every score. PDFs of the most correct version you have of every part, right? Just as a fail-safe, so you have it. And now, if you really want to do this, here's what you should do. And Steve and I spent some time, so Steve, maybe unmute. The most recent versions of Finale have the Smoofle compliant fonts. So Smoofle is the open source font library that Dorico uses. If you open up an old Finale file, you should use the most. You should put the new fonts in, make them the Smoofle compliant fonts. I think it helps matters for the XML transfer.
I think so, the one I tried, but it also causes other issues. So, I mean, this is, as with all of this, it's going to be a mess, and there's no way around that. Do not think there's a magic way. There will never be a magic way to do this. Upgrade to Finale 27 if you haven't, and you can. Do not upgrade your Mac OS tomorrow if you're a Mac user.
Yeah.
It may very well break Finale.
There was an email that came. There's an email that came from Finale during this that's like, don't update to Sequoia because Finale will not work in Sequoia, or at least it's not supported.
Yeah. And then export is music XML from Finale 27 because it uses the latest version of music XML. After you've changed the in the font, the default font.
Yeah.
The,
what are the most recent fonts that are Smoofle compliant?
Maestro and Engraver, and then I think they called it Legacy, which encompasses Petrucci and all the old ones from years back. So that looks the same, but they move all the symbols around. This just sort of organizes stuff on the back end. Then you export as music XML uncompressed. I don't know why, but
do it uncompressed XML.
And then, get ready for pain and sadness.
It is. I mean, Steve sent me one or two that.
So what I've decided to do is not do it. I have 31 years of music in Finale.
That's what I would do. That's what I would do. I would not do it. Unless you're in the middle of a project, I would finish that project in Finale. But it can be done. It can be done. I've done a bunch of Eric Whitaker's arrangements. He would send me Finale files for the original things when I would transcribe something, and I would have John send me an XML file from Finale, and I'd go from there. It misses a lot. Oh, especially text items get missed. Notes are pretty good, unless they start getting futzy, like if you're doing feathered beaming, which, by the way, feathered beaming in here is pretty slick. If you want to do it, I could show you, but it's you just basically click the music, you hit the feather beam, and the feather beam tool, and it makes make it feather beam. It's pretty cool. But let's say you even like a tremolo. I noticed when Steve was sending me stuff, a tremolo came out like garbage. I mean, a tremolo here, if I were to make these into a tremolo, I go to my repeat tool here, I choose the tremolo, and it does it, and it even does the double, right?
Beautiful.
On and
I think
off.
Roshanne has to take off.
Yeah.
Bye,
Rosh.
I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. This is amazing. This is like, this is so much better than nothing. This is really, really helpful, and really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody here tonight. Sorry, I'm sneaking out.
No, go ahead. Bye. Thank you so much for doing it.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah. So I noticed that even like tremolos, because I think it thinks differently about them, they get completely messed up. You just have to re-input them. There's going to be a lot of re-input. You need the PDFs. I would make the PDFs and then have it, there on the screen as you're editing to try and match. But you have to know how to input this stuff in Dorico. You have to teach yourself how to do this stuff first, and then you will might be able to edit things. I think you're going to have also some issues in this category too.
One thing you've mentioned to me, and which I haven't done yet, is you bring it in and then you like copy each instrument or staff, paste it into a fresh Dorico or a fresh document with those same instruments. That should clean up a lot of the.
Yeah, that's what I have done with Eric's stuff usually. Is I would just create a new fresh soprano line that Dorico knows is soprano, that Dorico knows is a vocal line, that's a fresh, clean, open, regular Dorico staff player, and copy the music in. Yeah. Anything that's aleatory, you're going to have to renotate. Anything that's non-standard. I wouldn't be surprised if harmonics get messed up, because they're not symbols, right? They're parameters of a note head in this instance.
Yeah, I guess anything where Finale didn't have the intelligence to know what it was that you were doing, because Dorico clearly has that intelligence on so many levels that, and that's the takeaway I have here, is that you need to let it do its thing and not try to muscle it.
We didn't do percussion. I just looked at my list, and I know Roshanne wanted to do that so she can watch the thing later. If I will quickly do a basic drum set here, and in our farunk, and go up to the full score. And here's my drum set. Okay, now in my drum set, this is my kit. I hit edit kit. You change the instruments, you can change what lines they're on, you can change how they're notated, etc. And it's only those instruments, and they're mapped. You can map them to whatever. But when I input music in here, and I do a kick drum, right? It will automatically do the kick drum low. But let's say I wanted it actually to be a snare. I just it moves to only the options that you have in your set. If I have also a, let's say a cymbal, I can have the cymbal at the same time. It's an amazing way of using the drum set. I can also, if I have a percussionist that can have playing multiple things. Here's a percussionist playing anvil, and he also plays break drum, and he also plays triangle. So now it thinks it's an anvil, right? But let's say I want this note to not be an anvil. I want it to be the next one. I'm going to move it to the next. I'm going to go into Gallery View, and I can see everything that's in that kit. I can bring that down to I'll just copy it. And now when I go back to my page view, you can see that it changes it to break drum automatically. If I bring it over here and I have music, and let's say I want it to be here in the triangle, it should say to triangle, I think. If I go back here, it should be far enough away. Yeah, it'll actually do that kind of thing. So you never have to, it maps it for you. And that's all just because it's all in one player. Okay, that's probably enough, right, Joel? Steve and John, you have
absolutely great. So I just want to thank you, Newman. This was great, and thanks to the chat for really being just incredible, asking great questions, and then people in the chat doing a lot of the triage for us. So
I really, really do apologize if I went fast or if I was unclear. There's just so much to cover. I really did try my hardest and did my best for everybody. It's just too much to cover in 2 hours.
I think it was great. I think especially like it will be helpful having seen it to watch it again. I'm glad that it's recorded so like I can try like pause it and try to do stuff. I think that would be great.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you, Noom.
Thanks for joining, guys. And thanks, everybody. And good luck. It's a fantastic program. You have a lot of fun when you discover things in it. You'll be like, oh my God, I didn't realize it could do something like that, or look what it does. It's pretty cool. But really, if you run into trouble, go to the Steinberg YouTube channel. Is superb. They do an excellent job.
Hi, Cantor. The recording will be posted again somewhere. We will all share it on our various places. But however you found yourself here tonight, that source will also tell you where the recording is.
Exactly. Thanks, everybody.